Hello and welcome, members of the Wonderverse. I'm Hannah, and you're listening to episode 7 of Into the Wonderverse, your number one source for all things Scarlet Witch and friends. Greetings, fellow witches. I'm your host, Hannah. I'm a collector of all things Wanda Maximoff, and now indeed the witch herself, Agatha Harkness. My interest isn't just limited to the MCU. I collect all things Scarlet Witch in whatever form she may present herself. I've been posting on TikTok and Instagram for a year and a half now about Scarlet Witch news, history, and merch. But some of you are kind enough to want to hear more from me than just little snapshots of my thoughts. So here I am, longer and more yap-tastic than ever, ready to dive into the world of the Scarlet Witch, and of course, our supreme, Agatha Harkness. And so, as the season of the witch falls once more, as of next week, Agatha All Along officially starts airing, and this podcast will be taken over temporarily by the quest for the road, and for all who seek it. I hope you're as excited as I am, and that we can make this journey into the unknown together to celebrate the upcoming release of the show this week. The podcast will feature a detailed look at the comic life of one Agatha Harkness. But before we get into all that, let's do our Wonder Song of the Week. As it's the season of the witch, I have chose Burn the Witch by Sean James. It's a little bit of a darker tone this week, but since much of Agatha All Along seems to take place in Salem, I think it'll be absolutely perfect for the new show. I also encourage you to listen to the new remix of Agatha All Along because it's a lot of fun, as well as the Ballad of Witches Road, because I think it tells more of a story than you might originally have assumed about what's going to happen in the show. However, if you have a suggestion for Song of the Week, then you can get us on the little text me button that appears below the podcast, or just DM me over on Instagram. Let me know your selection, and if I choose it, I'll shout you out on the show. And once we have 10 songs, I'll post a link to the playlist and everybody can get witchy with me. It's been another massive week for news, obviously, since we're so close to Agatha, and I imagine it's going to stay that way for the rest of the season of The Witch. First up, we had 2 stunning comic releases last Wednesday, Scarlet Witch issue 4 and House of Harkness issue 3. I'm begging you, if you're not already reading both of these series, I need you to start right now because the art is beyond gorgeous. Wanda's final battle with the Griever did not disappoint, though some of you seem to feel like you need to attack Steve Orlando on Twitter. I'm begging you not to attack comic writers. We might not always see eye to eye with certain storylines, but it will not create a positive environment if I see you guys literally atting him like, please stop writing Wanda. That is not the way to encourage storylines at all. House of Harkness is continuing week on week, and I really do feel like this story is a gift to the fandom. I am absolutely obsessed with the idea of all of the magical beings in the Avengers and Marvel Universe coming together in one comic, especially in this kind of kid-friendly format. We have been begging for comics that are more accessible to younger audiences, and I feel like this is absolutely filling that hole. I love a little bit of romance. It's very anime. It's giving shoujo. I'm so excited to see Wanda and Jericho as love interests again. I'm excited to see more from characters in a casual way, like Selene and Cersei, people who I'd love to see in the MCU, as well as a young Loki and a bit of a different look at Doctor Strange. I'm begging you, if you haven't already subscribed to the Marvel Unlimited app, give this comic the love that it deserves because I want Marvel to take more creative risks like this. I genuinely feel like this is something they haven't done before. And I know people are saying it's similar to other mediums like Owl House, which I'm not familiar with, but genuinely give it a chance. It will absolutely delight you. Of course, more and more Agatha merch has been making its way to sale, with a full range of Agatha apparel appearing on Amazon, featuring those beautiful tarot card designs that we know are going to be super relevant to the show, so we should definitely be keeping our eyes on them. Followed by our first piece of Disney official Agatha merch, which is manifested as a pair of gorgeous Disney ears, which I will absolutely be picking up. As of recording this episode, they're only available in Australia and Asia, but I'm sure they'll show up in the Disney and UK stores very, very soon. They are, however, available in the parks, so if you are heading there soon, I would pick up a pair while they're still rare. We also got some Agatha cosmetics from Blackman Cosmetics, which is gorgeous. I've ordered them myself, and they are available all over the world. Hot Topic has released a full line of clothing, and we also got Agatha jewelry, and we've been told that Box Lunch is getting even more merch very, very soon. I imagine this week Disney has to drop the exclusive merch since, Agatha is coming out right now. but they were reluctant to do so for WandaVision since it would have revealed some of the twists. So they didn't actually release WandaVision merch till the show was already airing, which is, I imagine, why they're holding back right now. But don't worry, I'll keep you informed of anything that drops when it drops. Hot Topic has some new Wanda merch, which includes tarot card earrings and friendship necklaces. It's lovely to see more casual Wanda merch just showing up for purchase. So basically, if you're looking for good Halloweeny things, go to Hot Topic. I'm sure if you're in the US, you already know that, but for those of us abroad, some of the things are available on their website to be shipped, but not everything. It's to do with licenses, so just make sure you check before you check out whether or not it's available in your area. That wraps us up for news for now, other than the fact that obviously Agatha starts airing this week on the 18th. And we will be bringing you updates every single week. And we're going to have a brand new format in order to do so. And I know you're all waiting for it. I'd be amiss if I didn't talk about the biggest news of the week, which is, of course, that we've had it all but confirmed that we are getting a Scarlet Witch solo movie. This news is coming out of Production Weekly, a subscription service that both actors and other members of the industry use in order to find jobs, which is claiming that a Scarlet Witch solo movie is currently in production set for release in 2026. We did know that Marvel had an untitled release set for November of 2026, and so we're imagining that the Scarlet Witch solo movie will fill this gap. Production Weekly is usually a pretty reliable source, though it is worth noting that anybody can submit to there. However, it probably would have been taken down by now if it wasn't in some way legit. My lovely producer Nick did go through a bunch of the other projects that had been submitted to check their legitimacy, and he couldn't see any of them that weren't at least somewhat legit other than Spider-Man 4, which we've also heard has gone into production. Of course, this is just kind of confirming the rumours that we already knew. Marvel are putting out so much content showing Wanda. She's being tied in so much to the Agatha promo. I could not be more excited. And I'm so excited that Jack Schiffer is on board, and I really hope that Matt Shakman will come back to direct from WandaVision, because I trust him with Wanda. I trust them to write her. Jack has dropped out of Vision Quest, and we know that she is contracted for 3 projects over at Marvel, so it would make sense that she's dropped out of Vision Quest in order to pursue the Scarlet Witch solo movie. Honestly, I'm beyond excited. I cannot wait to see what she'll do with this, and of course, I will be keeping you up to date with any and all updates that come along. This is about as good of a confirmation that we're going to get, other than Marvel themselves being like, hey, it's confirmed. I'm not going to speculate on why they may or may not have chosen to leak this news this week, but if you're online, you know. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more details about what we on the podcast will be doing to celebrate Agatha All Along at the end of the episode, so don't forget to stay with me. But now, without further ado, here it is, a full recap of the life and times of one Agatha Harkness in the comics. Let's go back in time. Agatha Harkness debuted in Marvel Comics in 1970 in issue 94 of the Fantastic Four as the new nanny of Franklin Richards, the son of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. Her story, however, can be traced all the way back to the ancient times, since she once revealed that she was able to remember 500 years before Atlantis sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Basically, this means she's older than dirt. We don't have an exact date for when she became interested in witchcraft, but a lot of Agatha's story is currently under construction due to her sudden explosion in popularity. Unlike Wanda, Agatha doesn't have a long-standing comic backstory. Most of her backstory is a consequence of other actions, so I'd expect to see this backstory evolving a lot in the next few years. However, by the 15th century, she was knocking about near Transia by the iconic Wendigo Mountain, where she was a part of a coven that was attempting to stop the witch trials that were sweeping across Europe at the time. I bet you can all guess the next bit. In the late 17th century, Agatha found a home in no other than Salem, Massachusetts. There she began to finally practice magic in the so-called New World. But alas, privacy was not to be, and her coven was heavily persecuted during the event that would later become known as the Salem Witch Trials. It's worth me pointing out that we already know in the MCU that her backstory is going to be different, since our newest promo material tells us that she's a 350-year-old witch, and we know that she was born in Salem. And more recent comics have been trying to course correct for more MCU synergy by aging her back down. But it's still fun to go over her comic history, since it looks like we're going to be receiving more and more content that features her. In 1692, Agatha came across the mutant Angelica Jones, aka Firestar, who had been accidentally sent back in time. For those of you unfamiliar with Angelica, she has similar powers to the Human Torch, with the ability to fly and to control heat and flames in all forms. The locals obviously assumed that a woman with fireballs was a witch, and so tried to burn poor Angel at the stake. However, not the smartest plan with a lady who can control fire, and so she fought back, and Agatha got on the telepathic blower and invited Angelica to hang out with her. Once there, Angelica was worried and hoped that Agatha would help stop the witch trials, but unfortunately it turned out that Agatha actually approved of the witch trials, since she hoped the persecution would make magical people grow stronger and thus be prepared for a war against mankind. Dear old Aggie had even sent some of her coven to the trials. Assuming that everyone thought that the Witch Hunger Games were a top-notch idea, Agatha asked Firestar to join her. But Angelica, like any normal person, refused and instead fought back against Agatha. After managing to fend off Agatha's spell work, Firestar was able to free some of the members of the coven, who begged Agatha to just, let them live away from mankind, the logical solution. Not wanting to lose face after being beaten up by a teenager, Agatha decided to pack up and take her covens to the mountain of what would later become Colorado. It was here that Agatha and the other witches built what would become the New Salem, so named so that the witches could never forget the persecution that they suffered in the outside world. Mortals are forbidden to enter New Salem, and any association with the outside world was made punishable by death. Here Agatha gave birth to her son, Nicholas Scratch, but unfortunately, for some unknown reason, she decided to leave New Salem and instead left her son in charge. She dodged around for the next few decades, joining the Daughters of Liberty during the American Revolutionary War and teaching the women to fight for justice with the mystical arts. Her whereabouts after this were unknown until the end of the Second World War, when she was recruited by the US to join the Department of the Uncanny and fight against Hilda von Hate, an evil Nazi witch who might be one of the most villainous villains to ever villain, but with a name like von Hate, it wasn't like she had many career paths open to her. Her next appearance in history is also her first appearance in the comics, as after a long career as a governess, she was contacted by the Fantastic Four to become Franklin's nanny. Agatha was at this point living in a house on Whisper Hill, and since the Fantastic Four arrived on a dark and stormy night, she arrived that they spend the night rather than returning home. The mansion could not be more of a witchy-looking building, and I have to wonder if we might get to see Agatha have this kind of house in Agatha All Along. There is that house in the trailer, and I have to wonder, is this the house on Whisper Hill? Adding to the witchy feeling, as the Thing tries to get comfy, he immediately falls through a swiveling painting in his room in a very Scooby-Doo type moment and lands straight into the hands of the Frightful Four. For those not well versed in the Fantastic Four's enemies, the Frightful Four were a group of villains designed to be the sort of anti-Fantastic Four. At this point in history, they were made up of the Wizard, who was a longtime foe of the Human Torch, Sandman of Spider-Man Rogue Gallery fame, Paste Pot Pete, aka the Trapster, and the inhuman Medusa, who had at this point lost her memories. They'd been a pretty big threat to the Fantastic Four over time, having even almost killed them at one point, and their pursuit of the Fantastic Four is one of the reasons why they wanted a nanny for Franklin in the first place. Over the course of more cartoon-like moments, the Evil Four soon have all of the members of the Fantastic Four in their clutches. Having assumed that Agatha is nothing more than a poor old woman, they try to just skip on past her. She says, "Look guys, my cat Ebony has her hackles up," as if they were going to know that meant trouble. The Wizard then attacked, and Ebony went from a kitty cat to a panther real quick, at which point he tried to make an escape, and did the old embarrassing move of running into a tree. The Sandman and the Trapster tried their hand at attacking, but Agatha turned Sandman's body into a rock, then used a little bit of magic to make the Thing look utterly terrifying to the Trapster, at which point he faints in fright. While Agatha is turning the villain team's tools into dust, the Fantastic Four rush off to check on the baby, who is happily asleep. Agatha suggests that the rest of the group also go to sleep, and they do, except the Thing, who notes a book on Salem in Agatha's house. However, when Agatha taunts him with the idea that she's a witch and chases him back to his room, he asks no more questions. The Fantastic Four comics were at this time very much light-hearted and family-friendly fun, as you can tell. After this encounter, Agatha became Franklin's permanent governess and began to appear semi-regularly in the Fantastic Four comic for a variety of adventures. For example, she let Franklin and Sue stay with her when the Atlanteans attacked New York in issue 103. Agatha didn't directly reveal her powers as a witch, however, until issue 110, when she cast an amazing spell in order to save Reed from the negative zone. After this, she consistently used her powers to help the Fantastic Four in various situations, and continued as Franklin's protector and nanny until 1974, when she offered her services to a budding witch named one Wanda Maximoff. Having met Wanda, she sensed her desire to better control her powers and to learn about witchcraft. Declaring to Sue that her time with Franklin was over, Agatha said adios to the Fantastic Four and became Wanda's mentor in all things witchy. Wanda initially trained with Agatha until her marriage to the Vision, at which point Agatha told her she would have to keep training on her own since she had her own storylines to deal with. It turns out that her son Nicholas Scratch had fathered 7 sons of his own out in New Salem who were calling themselves, naturally, the Salem 7. With their help, Nicholas had taken control of the entire town and had convinced everyone that Agatha had betrayed their secrets while working with the Fantastic Four. The inhabitants, not seeing the irony of their actions, took Agatha back to New Salem so she could be put on trial. A witch trial, anyone? The Fantastic Four weren't having this, however, and followed along. They went up against the Salem 7, defeated them, and in the process, the people of New Salem realized that Agatha had never told anyone about New Salem, and that in fact the Fantastic Four had only found out about New Salem because they kidnapped Agatha and that had led them there. This caused them to decide that Scratch was evil and he was banished to another dimension. And then all was fine from then on, right? Right? No. The Salem 7 managed to take over New Salem and burn their grandmother at the stake, so Agatha apparently died. This is time number 1. But don't worry, she showed up a few issues later, providing absolutely no context for how she survived, to wipe Wanda's memory of her children after they were revealed to be nothing more than pieces of Mephisto's soul. Agatha remained an ally to Wanda throughout the years, supporting her, even when she fell back under her father's spell after the breakdown of her marriage. She also continued to be an ally to the Fantastic Four throughout the 90s and early 2000s. Wanda and her had an extremely close relationship during this time, with Wanda even referring to her as being like an aunt to her. However, this all came crashing down in the Avengers 503, when it was revealed that after Wanda confronted Agatha about her children, she had apparently murdered her in cold blood. Agatha's dead lady status came into question when, in issue 26 of the New Avengers, Wanda, who was sort of suffering from amnesia, told Clint, who had found her in a small village near Wundagore Mountain, that her Aunt Agatha was looking after her. This mysterious aunt was mentioned again when Wanda explained that she was living in the village because she was taking care of an elderly relative who would worry if she came home too late. It's probable that Agatha was actually a ghost during this time, since the next time she was seen, Agatha was hanging out with Wanda in her undead form. When Wanda started her iconic 2016 run, it seemed that she was living with Agatha's ghost in her apartment in New York City. The two of them agree that magic is broken and that something must be done to fix it. After visiting Ireland, they decide that it's time to walk down Witch's Road. You can never keep a good witch down, and thus after this long journey, Agatha was resurrected when Wanda's mother Natalia sacrificed her soul to revive the goddess of witchcraft. After her return from the dead, Agatha returned to living on Wundagore Mountain. Agatha then chopped and changed around for a while, spending some time back with the Daughters of Liberty and then teaching at Strange Academy. She was particularly interested in teaching at the academy, as Nico and Zoe were descendants of the original Coven members from back in the 15th century. Speaking of her old coven, unfortunately one of the members of the original gang, Corinna, who had been trapped in a place called the Dominion of Valor, finally managed to defeat her captor and take control of the Dominion. Pretty annoyed that she had been trapped there since the 15th century, Corinna chose violence, and giving herself the funky new name of Coruscant, decided to bring about the end of the world. Just little girly things. Luckily, Agatha attacked her with a magical dagger that could siphon her power, while Zoe and Nico destroyed the Black Mirror that acted as a link to the Dominion of Coruscant. It's like the band was back together again. This energy, becoming free, caused a huge explosion, and neither Corinna nor Agatha were anywhere to be seen. Corinna had headed back to the Dominion, and Agatha, now young and hot, had thus gone into hiding. Agatha's young form had actually been seen before in an earlier Silver Surfer comic, but back then she was a blonde, and with the success of WandaVision, synergy had to be reached, which led to her new dark-haired Catherine Hahn-esque look. Worrying about the balances of power in the universe, Agatha offered to take a part of Chthon, but Wanda refused, leading Agatha on a personal quest to create a new Darkhold. She staged a fight with the Scarlet Witch, in which she managed to trick her into letting her inside her body, where she ripped out Chthon's heart. She then, like the theatre kid that she is, started grabbing various heroes and pitting them against each other to see which one was worthy to be imbued with chaos magic. Agatha then took control of the victors of these battles and took them off with her to an abandoned ship in the Bermuda Triangle, and used them to fight the demons that had arrived to stop her from creating a new Darkhold. The wonderful Clee had been investigating the abductions of some of the heroes because Agatha had nabbed some pretty notable names and eventually found Agatha on the astral plane. Of course, a fight then broke out, but it ended abruptly as Agatha was sucked back into her body. However, during the fight, Agatha told on herself about trying to create a new Darkhold, and thus Clee and the Avengers headed to the Bermuda Triangle to stop her. Obviously, Agatha used her powerful, mind-controlled heroes to protect her as she began performing the ritual to create the Darkhold. Unfortunately, those pesky Avengers were too powerful, and they managed to stop the ritual, which ended in an explosion. Harkness, still young and stunning, washed ashore, where she was approached by a young boy. She questioned him where his parents were, but the child told her that he didn't have any, and it was revealed that he was a Darkhold that she was attempting to create in human form. And that, my friends, is our favourite Purple Witches comic book story up until now. You didn't think I was just going to leave you there, did you? No. As Agatha All Along is coming out this week, I thought that me and my producer, Nick, would do some final thoughts on WandaVision and our predictions for Agatha All Along before we get started. And then from now on, there will also be a visual form podcast for you to watch while Agatha All Along is airing, just so you can see our pretty little faces. Say hi to everyone, producer Nick.
Hello, everyone.
His first name is actually producer.
As some with birth certificate.
Yeah, it is. Nick did promise to rewatch WandaVision before we recorded this, and then he didn't. So I think you should all send him hate.
I did actually rewatch Multiverse of Madness.
The worst one.
Which...
I don't think that's Agatha relevant.
It's not Agatha relevant.
No. Do you remember anything about Agatha?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, what do you remember about her?
I do. She was pretty much the architect. It was Agatha all along.
It was Agatha
all along. The credit sequence when that came up was just hilarious. I think Catherine Hahn is a fantastic actress. I've been a fan of hers for many, many years. And seeing her kind of be given the role in the show, really, her own show, to do basically her thing and kind of be able to eat into a character is just wonderful to see. For me, one of my favorite little roles recurring roles she popped in was in Parks and Rec.
Oh, I love her in Parks and Rec.
And she was so good in that. And it's just, she's like popped up and stuff across, many...
Glass Onion, she was very good in the Glass Onion as
excellent Glass Onion.
So would you say that as a non kind of Wanda stan, are you hyped for Agatha All Along?
So this is the other thing as well. I stayed out of all marketing. I watched the first teaser, because basically when it comes to...
That means he's not been keeping up on my TikToks.
Basically, if I'm going to watch something anyway, I tend not to watch anything that's any trailers or anything. So it doesn't, because marketing nowadays, they have this habit of just showing too much, and even I'm just like, I just want to go see how it is.
I've heard they've actually done a pretty good job of they've showed the premise by showing us only kind of clips in the first few episodes of what I've heard. That the final few episodes, there's rarely been any material. It looks like they've shown us a lot, but I think they're showing us a lot of the same scenes but broken up. I think the end of the show is going to take a big turn. That's a prediction that I'm making. I think that the quest for Witch's Road is going to be kind of the very beginning of the show. And I really think that from what I've heard kind of through the grapevine about, 7, 8, 9, I think we're going in a completely different direction. We know the Salem 7 is going to be a part of the show. And I was talking this week on the podcast about the Salem 7's role within the comics. And there was a little clip that I think is really interesting in the teaser where we saw the Darkhold, which is obviously in Agatha's possession, in a crib. My prediction is that she traded her baby for the Darkhold, and Nicholas Scratch is going to be back for revenge because, what if your mom traded you for a dark book? I would be pretty pissed off if I was him. I would not be happy about that one.
My prediction with the show, I think it's going to take the same kind of format as WandaVision, in that instead of showing different sitcoms and kind of things that she grew up on, it's going to show different iterations of witches over the years. And I think deep cuts, I reckon we might see a Haxan reference. which would be pretty cool from a film point of view.
I've heard we're going to get our first Mephisto reference, but, you know, we were so caught up on that in the WandaVision theories. You know what? It's actually been so nice to go back to Twitter and all of the theories to be so batshit. Like, I kind of want that for the show. You know what? The first minute I saw that Joe Locke was playing Mephisto, I was like, oh, thank God, we're back. We're so back, baby. I saw Jack Schaefer saying that she actually like got really like het up about the predictions being so wrong for WandaVision. At first, she thought that was a really negative thing, and her and Matt Shack were kind of nervous about that. And then they were like, oh no, they're all just crazy. Elizabeth Olsen was like, no, they do this. They're actually all just unhinged and they're going to do it no matter what.
You're all unhinged?
Yeah, we're all unhinged.
You're all unhinged.
Well, you know I'm delusional. But I was proved less delusional than everybody thought I was with the Production Weekly news, you have to admit.
You were, yeah. So I got text messages asking about like, you know, Scarlet Witch news and stuff and the movie and whether it might be happening, might not. And I remember the TikTok and I was like, it's nothing really that I've kind of seen on the trades. And even then, like, apart from the Production Weekly, I'm just going to say this, apart from the Production Weekly literally snippet that's on there, there's been nothing in Variety, Hollywood Report or Deadline, which is like the big three trade newspapers. I think it's just because they're kind of holding out for a big announcement, or it's going to be tied to the finale of Agatha All Along. It will be coming out around about there to kind of hype. That's kind of, you know, how
my prediction is. I do really think that before they obviously Wanda was never. She hadn't taken off in the comics as much as she has in prior years. There's definitely been kind of highs and lows for her. But I do think that they were surprised, as they Marvel tend to be whenever a girl does well. I think they were super surprised at how popular she became. And I do think that they underestimated the backlash that would happen with Multiverse of Madness to kind of the way they went with her character. Especially Michael Waldron, who I just don't really like his writing very much. I think that they were going in the Scarlet Witch is a hereditary title, a Young Avengers, Billy takes over for Wanda kind of direction. And I think that they are backtracking on that. I think we were very much going down the Young Avengers route, and the reshuffle that Marvel has gone through has taken us back more towards a Scarlet Witch solo movie. I would love if they went down the Children's Crusade route. And I've heard that Downey isn't playing the 616 version of Doctor Doom, and I would love to see them do the Wanda and Doom relationship.
So this is the thing about, I mean, kind of related to Marvel as a whole, they're very, very careful in what they say. And in the actual announcement of Robert Downey Jr. coming back, it did not say Doctor Doom, it said Victor Von Doom. Mm-hmm. And Doctor Doom is the name of the villain, you know, but everybody's just kind of taking that as, oh, he's Doctor Doom. I think it's just it's like the whole multiverse shenanigans.
They can't afford to pay him for more than 2 movies. Yeah.
So it's just the multiverse shenanigans that I think was going on. Marvel's just a funny beast recently. There's it almost seems as though they're a bit lost, and I'm really, really hoping that with hands like Jack Schaefer with what, you know, the presumed Scarlet Witch movie, and Matt Shackman helming Fantastic Four, first step. Like, I think there's going to be a bit more controlled hand on things, I think, because that was the thing about WandaVision, really, was that it was a very, very steady hand doing that show. And like,
I want them to take their cues from Daredevil. I think a longer season. I think that I think all of the phase 1 of shows suffered from being a bit too short, especially Falcon, because I think Falcon the Winter Soldier had a really, really good story there, but them cutting out the pandemic storyline really like cut the villain's motivations down. Moon Knight needed 2 more episodes to tell. Moon
Knight needed 2 extra seasons, but that's just me, you know, talking about how great Oscar Isaac is.
Do you want to do it on the podcast? Nick met Oscar Isaac.
I have met Moon Knight, Poe Dameron, Llewellyn Davis himself. He is on because we live in Edinburgh. Don't think that's a doxing thing to say.
No, you're all no.
And as if anybody knows, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein has been shooting in Edinburgh, and where I work, which I'm not going to reveal on the podcast, Oscar Isaac came in to visit and had a really nice chat with him. He's a really super nice guy. And then very recently, Guillermo del Toro came into the shop as well, where I work as well. So. Yeah,
it's been a big week.
Big week.
That's why the podcast is a little bit late, but you can forgive him. You know, he met Moon Knight, so we can forgive him.
Marvel just seems a bit kind of unfocused. I mean, the whole Jonathan Majors stuff.
I'm so glad though, because I do think that some positive stuff, especially, has come out of the strike. Having showrunners take the helm in the way that they have. I've heard nothing but good reviews about both Agatha and Wonder Man, which I was not expecting. I thought Wonder Man was going to be a bit of a train wreck, which is a shame because I actually really like Wonder Man as a concept. Like a B-movie star becoming a superhero is so fun to me. So I was nervous about the show, but I've heard that they're both reviewing really well, not so much Ironheart. But I do think that I love this new focus thing. As much as I was disappointed not to get a lot of announcements out of Comic-Con and D23, I do think that focusing on the projects you have really hard and giving them the space that they need is what Marvel needed. Though I'm terrified what they're going to do with the Spider-Man movie and the multiverse stuff.
The Spider-Man thing, I really didn't want to talk about this.
Nick's a Spider-Man guy.
I am a Spider-Man guy. If anybody, as you kind of probably well know, at the end of No Way Home, he is a street level. That is the implication. He is a street level hero with no ties. He's basically doing the Spider-Man 2 thing where he's living in a crap apartment and, fighting street level heroes. That's my dream, is that Spider-Man movie, and it looks as though from reports that Sony is once again dropping the ball. The thing that I kind of want to just speak about a little bit in terms of Marvel is that they haven't learned the lessons of Lucasfilm. Now, for those that know, when Star Wars Force Awakens basically did what it did, there was so much, a big push to basically push Star Wars to the nth degree. And it was like, we're going to have shows, we're going to have a movie. And then it was, Rogue One did very, very well, but it had production issues. It was loads of reshoots. And Last Jedi, even though that is a great movie, please come at me, internet, I don't care.
I like it too. I really
Last
think
Jedi is great.
I
know it's a controversial opinion. And
then we're going to share it on the podcast.
But Solo, a Star Wars story, came out in May, literally like 6 months after Last Jedi came out, and it did not do well. So basically because of that, and then we had The Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, and then Book of Boba Fett, which was pretty much Mandalorian 1.5.
They found something that worked, and then they kind of
they oversaturation, and they basically had to pull back from that. They announced projects. It was Taika Waititi was going to do a series and going to do a movie. There was Rian Johnson's trilogy, which we've not heard anything about because he's kind of been stuck in Benoit Blanc mode. And we've, Patty Jenkins was supposed to do a World War II Battle of Britain style Star Wars movie. And that's just
some concepts I would love to see. I'm really sad. I am a Star Wars girl. I grew up really loving Star Wars, and I just haven't cared since.
It's the oversaturation of the media.
The thing for me is, I would love to get into the Acolyte, but I am so afraid of the way that Star Wars responds to backlash.
It's also been cancelled as well.
I know it's already been cancelled.
The best show.
I watched the Kenobi series, and that's the last. And I watched some of Ahsoka, and that's the last I kind of.
The best Star Wars thing I've seen post Last Jedi was Andor, because of Tony Gilroy, who's one of the great film writers. He directed one of the great 21st century films, Michael Clayton. His show Andor is just absolutely phenomenal, and Cassian Andor is a fantastic character, really played really well by Diego Luna, and Andy Serkis gives a great performance in the show as well.
Think, to bring it back around to Marvel, I think that's what WandaVision was. It gave us great actors, and they got sitcom actors to act in sitcoms, which is a brilliant move. And I think that this return to Westview and seeing the genius of Catherine Hahn and saying Agatha Harkness is a pretty compelling character from the comics. With the Fantastic Four coming in, I would love to see, if the Fantastic Four truly are going to be in a different universe, I would love to see Catherine Hahn as their kind of kooky nanny from that period too. And she made a comment about that recently. And I think that there's a lot of people saying, who asked for this? Who asked for this? The best project shouldn't be things that people are asking for. What we want is for Marvel to see genius and to take it. They saw the success of WandaVision. I think Vision Quest is the less obvious sequel. It's the obvious sequel, but I think it's the less compelling option because Vision's backstory in the films is way less compelling to me than his comic backstory. If he did have Simon's brain, Simon Williams' Wonder Man, and those two series could have kind of coincided with him being like, look, Simon's a real person, and now I'm not a person at all, I'm White Vision. I think that would be a much more compelling storyline than Vision was never based on a person. He doesn't have this kind of inner turmoil about what it means to be a human. And so I kind of hope that we're going to find a way to get round to that whereas I think Agatha All Along, it's a stylistic piece and it's perfect for Halloween. Marvel is seeing a gap whereby I do think we should encourage Marvel to take risks with the project. WandaVision was such a success because it was something so different to a regular Marvel project. And that's what Marvel movies used to be, is that we got Iron Man, which is a very kind of straight up action movie, but then Winter Soldier was like a spy thriller type movie. And I think that putting the heroes in the genre that they are a part of is the way forward for Marvel in general. And I think that's what inspired me. When I was sat down to watch WandaVision in the pandemic, I was a fan of Marvel. I had predominantly originally been a fan of Marvel during the original Avengers era like everybody else. I went with my brother to see Captain America in the cinema. I saw the first Iron Man movie. Iron Man 2 was my favorite Marvel movie for a long time. I really enjoyed the first Avengers movie. And then I saw Age of Ultron, and I hated what they did with that storyline. And for a while, I went to see all the movies in cinemas, but they lost me a little bit. And then I saw Black Widow, and I really liked it because I'd waited so long. Yes, the ending is a mess, but I absolutely adore the fight sequence in Black Widow. And I'd watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and then I saw WandaVision, and obviously it was during the pandemic, and I thought, this is great television. Marvel have done something they haven't done yet, and they have made a tragic character funny, and they have taken a format that is comforting and put a Marvel spin on it. And I really think Agatha All Along is that too. I think that the idea of leaning into the witchy part of Marvel Comics, which is so fun, and magic is, we've only kind of gone there with Doctor Strange before, who is kind of just Tony Stark, but a wizard in a lot of ways, in the MCU at least. And I think this is a new and interesting set of characters to follow. And I wish we had a little bit more of the 2010s kind of attitude towards projects, in that it didn't used to be, who asked for this? This is so woke. It would be like, wow, this is so interesting and different.
For me, the reason why I brought up Star Wars, and I'm going to link it back to your point now, is that there is what I call the Disneyfication of Star Wars and of media, and it is that they've got product, they've got content to sell, and it is the Jeff Goldblum quote in Jurassic Park, where before you realize what you had, you package it and you patent it and you sell it and you start selling it, and that's kind of what's been happening recently with Marvel. The hope with me, and it really does feel as though this is kind of what's happened, is they've learned lessons from that, where they've almost taken a step back to realize what they have and to start taking into consideration, hang on a minute, no, we can start doing the proper thing again. And I think there have been seeds in that in the past. I think WandaVision is very much the seed of that. I think Loki is also another one of those shows, and same with Moon Knight, where they are these seeds of good ideas and good concepts.
I thought Loki season 2 was so much better than season 1 because I really didn't love. I think that they've gone back to loving the characters themselves rather than, I think there is a love for the characters, and that's something I want to see as we go forward, is not just every character being this kind of like stop, wait for a gag, hit a pose, let's go. I think that shows like WandaVision and season 2 of Loki, where we broke down, what does Loki want? We've followed him for all of these films. He's never succeeded. What does he actually at his core want? And I think that WandaVision did that, and the Multiverse of Madness walked back on it like Absolutely. And I think that we're asking ourselves, okay, Agatha's an evil witch, but who is she? Like, in our universe. And I think that I think Daredevil is hopefully going to do that too. I worry about Captain America Brave World purely because of reasons can you cut that part? Just like that part there. It's like I think that going forward, I really hope that they take a character first approach, and I think that the new rule where you have to have a show Bible and you have to have a showrunner and everybody has to talk to each other is the most important rule that they could have input to go forward. It is
all about direction at the end of the day, and a single cohesive unit and the working in the same direction, but having the overarching themes and the overarching what do you call it, like the big bad kind of over the edge, overseeing things almost like from afar without going too far too quickly into this is all connected, because that's kind of what worked with the phase 1 really of Marvel. I watched Iron Man in the cinema, and when Nick Fury popped up at the end, I didn't really believe that any of this was going to happen, and cut to 16 years later, here we are.
Well, it's the art of the origin story, I think, is something Marvel lost somewhere along the way. Like, The Eternals was such a mess to me because they didn't...
Beautiful movie, though.
...take time to... Yeah, I think there should have been 2 movies, in that we should have got to know the team before we fragment them. I think that is something that Marvel's lost, in that they try to shoehorn character introduction into somebody else's movie, then they get a spin-off, and we're scared of the origin story. Because everyone's seen Spider-Man's origin story so many times, but no one else has seen anybody else's origin story.
It's a case of like we've ended up with Hercules being introduced, Black Knight being introduced, and Scar being introduced pretty much by post-credit sequences, and like it doesn't feel it feels like in The Incredible Hulk, 2008's Louis Leterrier's Incredible Hulk, the moment when Tim Blake Nelson falls on the floor and his forehead starts, bulging. If anybody remembers that from that movie, it's the early 2000s look on how we're going to do heroes and villains and what have you with origin stories. Whereas it kind of feels as though, no, we're going to be taking our time. And we are seeing that with characters that are lesser known, like Pulsar, for example. Like, she got so much time in Marvels because of the work that they put in for WandaVision. And Teyonah Parris, like, really, really sells that role because of the work that they're really putting in for it. And we see that on another level with characters who, people who've been these characters for many, many years. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, like, he knows that character inside out, and he is going to be playing that character until he's 90. Like,
yeah, he's not getting out.
He's not getting out. And with the way with Elizabeth Olsen, like, yeah, you can kind of look at it one way and think, is it a shame, she's been locked into these contracts in the way that she has, with, having to do the appearance in Multiverse of Madness because it was in her contract, and she's had to do the whole Jennifer Lawrence kind of thing of being like, I just need to see this out as Mystique. I just need to get to the movie where I die. Like that, whereas like I feel like she loves the character a lot, and that she knows that this is like her character and her role. And from an outsider who's, like Hannah keeps saying, I'm not a Wanda stan, but I do love the character from a point of view where it's like when she popped up in Infinity War, I was like, yes, you get him, like, so. And really, the character basis of how these films now these projects are going, really just seems as though there's a lot more focus. And I'm hoping that the Disneyification of things is going to kind of simmer down a bit because of the saturation of the market, and because of, I think they're kind of scared of just doing too much. And I think audiences have a bit more power than we think we do, in that if we stop seeing stuff, it's gonna happen.
It's like I keep saying, if you want to see Wanda merch, if you want to see Agatha merch, you gotta vote with your feet. You gotta watch the show when it premieres. You gotta buy the merch. That's what you gotta do. You gotta like the post. You gotta give them that engagement, because that's what they want. Disney is, at the end of the day, a money-making company. You guys, like, you're so delusional. She died. If Marvel wanted to do anything, if it would sell tickets, they're gonna do it. And so that's what you gotta do. And so that we know this podcast isn't 800 years old, we're going to do final thoughts before Agatha airs. What would you like to see? What are your hopes? What are your dreams as a non-Wanda stan?
As a non-Wanda stan, I would really love to see them kind of go really hard into the whole witches of the, eras, like media portrayal of eras, media portrayal of witches over the years, because for me, that's what I find interesting. I would love to see a Haxan reference, a movie that is really, really weird. I would love to see a Blair Witch Project reference. That would be great. And I would love to see a Robert Eggers witch reference, like anything that kind of goes into the really dark and gnarly side of witches, because that's kind of who I am. And, at the end of the day, it is releasing in the lead up to Halloween, so you never know.
I would really like to see a comprehensive backstory for all the characters that are appearing on screen. I would love for Jennifer Kale's backstory to be relevant, especially if we could tie in Man-Thing, because that was underrated as heck, and her backstory is so cool, and I would be so mad if we don't get any of that, her link to Man-Thing, since he's already in the MCU. Really want to dive into Alice Wu's character, and I want to be right about the teen being Billy, or I'm going to have to retire, because I've staked so much of my name on this at this point.
I mean, the subtitles gave it away.
I think they did, but look, I have people sending me hate about this.
No, seriously, the subtitles give it away. You'll be surprised.
And obviously, I would love if we got a little bit of my girl, Wanda Maximoff. And you know what? I'm going to predict it. I'm going to predict that she is in some way in the show, whether that be post-credits or whatever, and you guys can play this clip with clown music behind it when she isn't. But, that's my gig. Being Delulu is my gig.
I will play this clip with clown music on it if it doesn't come up. I will make sure that this is played back, and Hannah gets to hear this. Exactly.
The whole circus.
Whole circus.
Right. Well, you have been listening to Into the Wandaverse, hosted by Hannah Gardner.
Produced by producer Nicholas Chandler.
If you are hankering for a little bit more me, you can find me over on TikTok at Into the Wandaverse, or on Instagram at The Wandaverse. I will be posting episode recaps directly after it happens, but we will also be doing episode recaps here on the podcast, both in visual form, and there'll be an audio file too. You can find Nick over on the Film Nick on TikTok, maybe, if he ever posts one. Cover art by the wonderful Ella, music by Melody Ray Griffiths, and also a little clip from It Was Agatha All Along. And remember, stay magical. Of course, we had some massive nudes this week. Nudes? Okay.
Nudes.
I've got nudes this
nudes.
week.
Nudes.
Wonder nudes. Okay.
No, wrong format, wrong website.
OF.
Not for the kids.
No. Okay, sorry, there was no OF dropped.
Patreon OnlyFans only.
Okay. Take 3, I guess.